thank you to PlayStation for the free review key. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach is a title I've eagerly anticipated since its announcement, but that excitement also came along with a lot of expectations. I had a feeling that the expectation of me at least enjoying the game would be met from what I had seen already, but the main question was if it would exceed them. That was because the first Death Stranding was my favourite game ever, and going into this experience, I knew there was the possibility that this could dethrone its predecessor. Though I wouldn't be sure of that until much, much later. There was a lot of game in front of me. Now, keep in mind this video is obviously from the perspective of someone who adores Death Stranding and its original formula, so the core gameplay not having changed too much was a huge plus for me. And in the interest of keeping things spoiler-free, I'm not going to be discussing what happens in the story, but I will generalise my thoughts while not ruining any surprises narratively. That being said, it would be near impossible for me to not give away some unavoidable topics such as where Death Stranding 2 is set geographically, and I am going to go into some detail into certain mechanics that feature within the first third or so of the game, so just be aware of that. For the record, I'm currently clocking in at well over 100 hours of playtime, the majority of which is comprised of side content and my random expeditions around every corner of the map just for the fun of it. I balance both the main story and my own exploration as I went along, which means that I don't have a concrete time frame for how long it takes to just go straight for the credits. But if you do want to build all the roads and experience everything the game has to offer, then yeah, you'll be reaching over 100 hours quite easily. I also want to quickly mention that my footage is recorded on a base PS5 with the game setting on quality mode. Death Stranding 2 is set in Mexico and Australia, though it will be the latter that you'll spend a large majority of the playthrough in. There are many scenic views to marvel at, and numerous more out-of-the-way areas that might hold a small waterfall or another otherwise unnoticed detail which I always enjoy scouting out. Overall, the game feels different to the first title both visually and tonally. There's more variation here in terms of the types of landscapes available, and even though I do really miss the lush, mossy Icelandic hills, I did appreciate that it didn't feel like I was just experiencing the exact same world again. Things look a lot grander both in gameplay and cutscenes, with a seriously impressive cinematic quality that had me just completely blown away within minutes of booting up the game. Also, the cinematography, which was already amazing in the first game in my opinion, really stepped up in Death Stranding 2. I even have particular sequences and shots just burned into my mind from how imaginative and evocative they were. Like, I can't stress enough how truly breathtaking some of the visuals are. Exploration and traversal also get an upgrade as there are now dynamic elements added into the mix, such as the day and night cycle and environmental events such as bushfires, sandstorms, gatequakes, and flash floods. Across a main story playthrough, you'll experience each of these, some more than others, though things like bushfires are very limited to where they can actually take place, so I didn't end up having to deal with them much. But it was pretty memorable having to try and dodge a boulder or avalanche heading straight for me at the worst possible moment thanks to a nearby gatequake. All of these things together make the world feel even more alive, which brings me on to the creatures you find within it. Much to my delight, there's an animal shelter in the Australian map that can house any creatures you rescue from the dangerous landscapes you come across in the region. I actually stumbled across a koala before I knew that you could catch them, and I was praying that there'd be something like the animal conservation platform in MGS5, so when I did unlock that part, I was very, very happy. You can even chill out with your furry friends, and the nearby speaker will play little informational tidbits about the animal you're looking at, which is super cute. Plus, there are different fur colours too, with special rare variations. I only wish there were more species you could find, and expanding out to reptiles and amphibians too would have been cool. For me, the animals kinda served as the collectibles for the game, since there otherwise aren't really the equivalent of memory chips that you'd get in the first title, which, if you're not aware, were basically a type of item you'd find around the world that would, for example, highlight a movie that served as some inspiration for a part of the game. I actually really hope there would be something along those lines, since I'm interested to see what other media influences video game worlds. And while there are some avenues to gain this kind of insight, I just feel like one solid collectible type like this would have been nice as another reward for extra exploration. Without saying too much, the gameplay experience is structurally very similar to the first installment, but it balances this familiarity out with completely unexpected sequences and scenes. A lot of my favourites were optional moments, and I think there's more incentive than ever to go for getting those 5-star relationships with all of the preppers and facilities. Whether optional or not though, I can easily think of a couple scenes that everybody is going to lose their minds over. Delivering and building of course remains as the focus of the gameplay experience. Things like structures have largely stayed the same aside from some improvements here and there. For example, these ziplines now have the option to angle your pathways, meaning you can curve over and around obstacles between 2 zipline posts should a straight path be blocked. There's also the really charming addition of having regional information being relayed by a voice, telling you what the area is known for and some of its history. It's a super tiny detail, but it genuinely helped it feel like this place existed long before Sam arrived one day. One major addition to gameplay is that of mines and monorails, giving you access to large quantities of materials you'll need for rebuilding and upgrading all those roads and structures to make traversal across terrain much smoother. You have to put in the necessary repairs to get them functioning, but the monorails are particularly great because you can load cargo, your vehicle, and even yourself onto it, and you watch it in real time as it moves you to your destination. You can also integrate it into a zipline network, which helps conserve chiral bandwidth you'll want to keep for other structures elsewhere, so it ended up being one of the most useful new mechanics for me. I always wish that Death Stranding had a music player on the go, and not just within the safe rooms, so when I eventually unlocked just that, I was over the moon finally being able to make little playlists for my travels. It's got some old favourites as options, but also plenty of new songs, and just so you're aware, the music player can only play in areas that are already connected to the chiral network. On that topic, I have to say that Woodkid did an absolutely phenomenal job with the game's soundtrack. It's definitely a different vibe to the first game, but it's a perfect match for Death Stranding too. One of my favourites being the track that plays during the VR training missions you can access via the safe room, either in certain facilities or upon the DHV Magellan, which acts as the movable home base during the game and as a way of fast travelling between destinations aside from beach jumping. Sam also has a skill tree, which has a bunch of useful upgrades ranging from improved bullet power to the ability to give out more likes with each press of the touchpad. But by the time I did all the optional stuff I wanted to do, I had such an influx of points and nowhere to spend them. So it would have been good to be able to use those elsewhere or put more points into specific skills to upgrade them further. Combat is mainly the same as well, but I did find myself experimenting with the available weapons in this game a lot more than I did in the first. I'm actually quite excited to see the kind of stuff players pull off with this much more expanded toolset at their disposal. And trust me, there's some really fun stuff you can unlock in this game, but I won't mention those specifically because realizing, wait, this is a thing I can use, was a big part of the enjoyment. BT combat has evolved in a very unexpected way too, but again, it's something that is at its best when it's revealed organically in a playthrough. The BT and boss designs are fantastic though, and that goes for character designs as well. If you've seen the recent gameplay showcase, you'll have already noticed that large groups of chiral creatures are a new addition too, and going through them, as I quickly learned, is not a good idea. They're much smaller threats than gazers and catchers of course, but can definitely turn a seamless delivery sour with how quickly they can swarm you and drain your battery levels. As for the friendlier creatures in Death Stranding 2, there are now more cryptobiote types, which are just as adorable as they are practical, allowing you to refill your battery level or induce temporary status effects. Vehicles still have 2 main types, but this time you can customize them with various attachments. This ranges from battery units and armor to weapons and sticky cannons, which can grab nearby cargo and pop it into the truck for you. You can have 2 arm attachments in total, so I would usually go with the sticky cannon and weapon combo for the most effective transport. I do really miss the Roadster from the director's cut though. Playing Death Stranding 2 and experiencing the multiplayer side in this early review period came with its own vibe, I guess, that wouldn't necessarily be the same if I had started the game on its full release day alongside an obviously far greater number of players. Regardless, it was nice seeing the same names very often, knowing that everyone here had the next few weeks to finish the game for review purposes. Now, as somebody with no life, I knew I'd have more than enough time to do the main story and complete a lot of the optional milestones, so as soon as road construction became available, I spent pretty much a whole day or two building a lot of them out. even trekking to areas I hadn't even connected to the chiral network yet just to reach the road pavers I had spotted from a distance. As I was building, I hoped that it could help out other players and maybe get them to the end goal quicker, and I even ended up putting up signs in places with the intention of signalling others towards some of the more interesting and hidden sites. I knew the infrastructure I had in place for traversal sufficed for my own needs, so instead I was thinking about what others might find useful, placing down structures for those who come after. With all of this, I had noticed that I had been raking in a lot of likes, so I'm going to assume my efforts were a success. Multiplayer functionalities are pretty much the same as the first game, where you can see things left behind or built by other players, and you still have strand contracts you can put in place, which allows more of that person's stuff to appear in your world. You again have combat assistance, whereby a player can throw you some weapons you're in dire need of during a boss battle, and you can make specific supply requests by putting signs down too. Plus, there's now a list of first aid requests, which are offline tasks submitted by NPCs, ranging from retrieving lost cargo to building a structure in a certain place. On the start menu for Death Stranding 2, there's a story recap option you can use to refresh your memory on the main events of the first title. However, I wouldn't recommend going into this sequel without having played the first title or at least watched a full playthrough, but I think that goes without saying. There's another feature in the game called the Corpus, which is basically a collection of explanations of terms and concepts unique to Death Stranding's world, as well as events that have transpired. Personally, I've already gotten a lot of use out of this as someone who likes to really dig deep into lore. Overall, Death Stranding 2 had a lot of pleasant surprises, whether mechanically or just from whatever I was seeing happen on my screen. There are so many moments that I cannot wait to see other people react to online, and in terms of the story, I don't really think there's anything else I could have personally wanted as a fan of the first game. On a side note, the occasional comedic scenes of this installment are genuinely very funny, as though embracing its weirdness in full force. Death Stranding 2's pacing is a lot tighter than the first, and I'd say it gives access to a lot of the fan-favourite mechanics much earlier. Even now, I'm still discovering new details within the game's world I hadn't previously picked up on. I fell in love with my playthrough more and more as the hours flew by, with moments both big and small all culminating in an unforgettable experience. I didn't find myself listing things that I didn't like. My thoughts were only ever, what more could there be? Then again, there is already plenty of things stuffed into this game, which is probably evident just from my playtime. This will not be the only video I make talking about Death Stranding 2. There's so much I desperately want to talk about when more people have finished the game, and I need to be able to pick apart bits of the story and characters, as well as detail my random findings in the world. But, most of all, there's a video of mine that is a little outdated now, so there'll be something coming when it's ready which will explain how Death Stranding 2 became my new favourite game. A huge thank you to PlayStation once again for the review code. If any of you watching have been following my channel for a while now, you'd probably know that I was beyond ecstatic to be able to play the game early. I wouldn't have had that chance if I didn't receive support for my videos over the years. And I say it at the end of every video, but I really do mean it each time. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, and if all goes to plan, I should have a video on Half-Life 2 coming out in a week, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one.